Welcome to the Meetings Podcast, the meeting organizer's podcast source for what's new in the meetings and events industry. Meetings Podcast is a conversation with a variety of voices that looks at events, meetings, and media. Meetings Podcast is sponsored by IMEX America, America's worldwide exhibition for incentive travel, meetings, and events.
Podcast listeners, this is Mike McAllen from Grashak Events and Media and AV for Planners. Wanted to thank our sponsors before we get into the interview. And today we have John Wall. John Wall is one of my favorite podcasters over the years. He does a podcast called Marketing Over Coffee and another one called, he used to do one called The M Show, and he also works with John Frederico at Event Hero, and they do Event Tech podcast. So check that out. They're podcasters and trying to get the podcasting going. I also want to thank IMEX America, of course. Wanted to thank them because they're a great sponsor of ours. Check out their websites and shows in Frankfurt and in Las Vegas. Wanted to thank 99 Designs. That's what the show is brought to you today by 99 Designs. It's a one-stop shop for all things graphic design related. I have a corporate production company. We do a ton of graphics, but it's a great place to go if you don't need a production company. How it works is designers from all the world will send you sketches and mock-ups of your logo or project, whatever you're working on for your business. So you fill out a little thing about what you're looking for, and then they'll all give you, you can just choose the different designs that they put up there, and then you can pick the person that you want to work with that design. Then you work with that person to the end, and that's it. It's really great. If you don't like any of them, you get your money back, which is kind of cool too. So you want to check that out. You can go to tinyurl.com/meetings99. I know that's a lot, but the 99 Designs affiliate link is like 3,000 characters. So I made a tinyurl.com/meetings99. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Once again, I appreciate you coming back. And for you new listeners, thank you for being here. And let's get right into the show with John. All right, welcome back to the Meetings Podcast. This is Mike McAllen from Grashak Events and Media and AV for Planners. And today we have John Wall. Hi, John.
Hello, Mike.
Thank you very much for speaking with me. It's kind of funny because I've listened to your podcast, Marketing Over Coffee, for around, 10 years now? How long have you guys been doing
Yeah,
that?
250 years, I think we've been podcasting now.
Yeah, so it's funny to be listening to because I've learned so much from that show. I don't know if people are listening. I mean, people are listening now and they're interested in marketing. It's a fantastic podcast.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's a great project, and we've kind of done it for love, and I think that's why we keep doing it, because we get to talk to cool people and cover the space we're in, so it all works out well.
Yeah, I and honestly, I mean that. I mean, I've learned so much. Like, actually, my wife too, because she thinks I'm really clever with marketing, but basically, I was just, jotting down notes from what you and Christopher Penn say, and then telling her like I came up with it. So
Right, that you have the edge. Well, the great thing with marketing in this day and age is there's literally nothing that we're working on now that's more than 10 or 11 years old. It's not like in David Ogilvy's age when, you had to work for 25 years to get a bag of tricks. It's like everything now is you've got to get it through your network fast because things move so quick.
Yeah, pretty crazy. And so do you guys first let's tell those of you who don't listen to Marketing Over Coffee, and I know who that could be, kind of explain who you are and what you do.
Sure. The biggest thing that I'm going right now is I work at Event Hero, and we're a company that does a bunch of stuff on the event tech front. We started out with badging and lead retrieval and event analytics, and we've added to that now integrations is a big part of what we do. There's so much event tech out there that connecting this stuff is a big part of what's just needed and as the market is kind of pointing us to. So I've been working with that for the past, I guess, over 2.5 years now. And that's kind of been the big jump for me, getting deep in the startup thing. I've been through 5 or 6 other startups, but this is the one where I'm in on the ground floor and, stomaching a huge chunk of the risk. So we've got that going. As you mentioned, Marketing Over Coffee, podcast I do with Christopher Penn, where we talk about marketing and tech. And we've been doing that for a bunch of years. And it's been great. I've had a chance to meet people like Seth Godin, Simon Sinek, Mitch Joel, a whole bunch of folks that are smarter than I am. And I'm able to get a chance to, make it sound like it's public service, but really it's a chance for me to talk to them privately, which is, incredible win for me. And God, on top of that, I guess, I live out in Massachusetts and was in Boston for a number of years, and now kind of live out in the woods of Western Massachusetts. But thanks to the power of the internet, I can still get to Boston and New York and wherever else without too much trouble.
Right. And I remember you in San Francisco seeing you in some really crazy pants one time.
And so that's funny. I've named this the Dennis Rodman effect. I think one thing that gets shortchanged in marketing is, you have to be remarkable. You have to create a stir. And a great example of that was for this company I was working for at the time. We had these golf pants that were just ridiculous. It was a kind of a powder blue, navy blue, and white argyle. So it's basically the most hideous golf pants you could ever find. And we would wear those as a crew. It was like something out of Anchorman, like 6 of us rolling in with these pants. And it was absurd, but there were 2 big things. One, and this is the problem, there's people that act absurdly and don't have any link to their product. So really they're creating a splash, but there's no benefit to that. Whereas the guys that made the pants were customers of ours, and the product helped explain how they could work so well. So it tied in. But then it was ridiculous. I would wear them to Dreamforce. And the second year I went back, there was somebody in a Starbucks that was like, hey, I saw you guys last year. I talked to you last year. And for somebody to remember somebody working a booth at Dreamforce for a year, I mean, that's ridiculous. That just doesn't happen. So, the pants are in the closet. So I don't have to break those out anymore, unfortunately.
Well, it's such a great conversation piece. I mean,
It is.
Those things, it's so hard to go. Not so hard. I mean, not for you, or you're very outgoing, but it's just like I could just see it. It was just a great thing to start a conversation with.
Yeah, it breaks the ice because people really are. There's kind of 2 states of mind. There's this alpha state where they're paying attention to you and they're talking to you, but everybody wanders around the floor in a beta state where they're just kind of more listening to their own thoughts and looking for cool stuff. And so something that breaks them out of that state is the conversation starter. And ridiculous pants is one way to do it. Maybe not the best way, but it does work.
And before we move on, I also remember the M show that you did, the podcast you did, and you stopped doing that, and that was a lot of fun to listen to. It's funny because now I'm talking to you, and it's like I know you, and I know you don't know me, but it's funny.
Yeah, no,
it's kind of scary and weird, and I don't know what it is. It's like it's a strange thing, podcasting.
It definitely is. Leo Laporte always talks about that. Like there's the intimacy of podcasting is unmatched. I mean, you're whispering to somebody's ear, so you do get to know the people. And I have to say, like the M show is great because I didn't have to catch anybody up. Like whenever I would go to an event or even with my family, like they just start talking to me immediately about like the stuff I had going on last week. Like they would know exactly, oh, how's the dog doing? How are the kids? And it's like I didn't have to do any of this. Here I am. This is what I do. And yeah, I guess there's a, well, no, I would say there's a touch of regret. In the back of my mind, I also often wonder, like, if I had put in another 5 years, would that finally have caught on and be more popular now? But the bottom line is, I'm competing with Jimmy Kimmel and all these other guys that have millions to dump into promotion and the content, right. And so instead of just doing news, talk, and entertainment, and here's my life and trying to be clever, by going down marketing and technology, we're doing this cast that like nobody else could do. It's totally unique stuff. And for people that don't know Christopher Penn, I mean, he's the analyst ninja, crazy man. And so between him and I, we produce some stuff that you can't get anywhere else. And so that makes it easier to cut through the clutter for us.
Yeah. It's interesting, too. I remember writing into you guys there and saying, well, one of the great things is that AV for Planners has a Marketing Over Coffee award.
That's like a whole nother marketing scam thing, and we started it out as a joke, making fun of awards, because there's so many of those awards where you have to pony up like $500 to get considered,
right,
and it's really just a scam for you say it's a scam. I mean, it's not a scam,
don't you? I mean, you can get $1 million awards, right? You can buy them.
They literally are. In fact, there's some great ones that are like, as long as you cough up the 500, you'll be a silver award winner. And then like 4 of them get picked to be the gold winner. But, and then, and the bottom of what they're really selling there is there's agencies where you walk into the lobby and there's this big cabinet full of awards. And so you're like, oh my God, these guys have won awards. Like,
Right.
And the average pizza shop owner has never heard of these awards. So he has no idea that the scam is going on. But so, yeah, we started the Marketing Over Coffee Awards kind of just as a joke, the anti-scam, because we were like, it's always free, and we just picked the best. But then after about 2 or 3 years of it, it was like we had some cool entries, and people were doing great stuff. And so it's less of a joke than it used to be. We actually take it kind of seriously. I mean, anybody can apply, and usually like the 3 best interviews of the year end up winning the award. And then for loyal listeners, it's kind of their cheap and easy way to get some free publicity and press. I mean, if you're a listener and you tell us just like you've done about the stuff that you were working on, and then you can even make videos about what you do with the mug, but we'll have to have a link to that. You can share your
I love my mug.
your
I should
mug
have my mug in
celebration.
front of me. I just picked the wrong mug. God, what am I thinking?
Oh, it's a good thing we're not on video. This is audio only. You're looking at the mug right now as you speak. I do. Yeah, I have in the whole background. I have all of them. They're starting to pile up, though. It's getting a little crazy.
That is awesome. Yeah. And so, what was the other thing I wanted to ask about that? The mug's great. So now I always say we're an award-winning company, and that's because we won from that award. And like.
That's it. That's all you have to. I mean, you can even make up your own awards and give them to yourself, right? Everybody can be an award-winning company. You just need something to show.
That's great. All right, so let's get into this because I think I have all sorts of things. What was the other thing? Oh, one more thing. So we had our first booth for AV for Planners at IMEX, and right before that, I had won a drawing, I guess, from a Marketing Over Coffee for so much money worth of swag. Mm-hmm. And it was fantastic. I still have some of the things around, like coffee mugs, and it was some company that you guys had, and I can't, which is horrible. I can't think of the name of the company. So,
it's now they're Amsterdam Printing. They were called
Vlad
Promos to Go.
What was his name? Some Vlad.
Promos to Go. Oh God, now you're killing me too because I.
Well, I'll look that up and put it in the show notes if anybody's interested. But they were really great. But it was just amazing. Like I got this box load of stuff. It was, it for a startup, as you know. Every dollar counts, and it was like I waltzed in there with shirts and bags and coffee mugs and all kinds of crap that people. That's right. I remember they had some deal. It was like for $150 you could get like 100 pens and some mugs and some shirts and like this whole box full of swag. Yeah, those guys. I mean, they print the Marketing Over Coffee Awards, and we've gone through 3 other vendors, and they've been far and away the best. Yeah. Ones out there. Huh. So yeah, in fact, even now my contact there doesn't work there anymore. Even and it's so funny. Here they did that podcast sponsorship like 3 years ago, and they still drive business from that. That's so great, so interesting. All right, so let's get started. Let's learn a little bit more about you. So, do you have a favorite quote?
Oh, I had to think long and hard about that because I love quotes, and I'm always juggling quotes. But the best one that I think I wanted to put out there was, "Look out for each other and never give up." It's profound and it's very optimistic. I had a bunch of them that were very pessimistic, and so I was like, "All right, I'm going to step up and I'm going to make the." I saw Creed this week, so I'm like, I'm going Rocky style. We're going optimistic.
I just did an interview with Tom Brett, and he went out and he said, "Oh, quote, I don't." He didn't read the. I actually put that when I send some of the questions over to the people I'm going to interview, just to kind of give them a feel for what's going to happen, so they don't blindsided. And that's the one that I put into the very top to see if they've read the questions. Really, that's why I did it, to see. Then I know as the thing's going on, they're not prepared at all for this. So
that's the brown M&M question.
It is. It totally is. So, but he didn't really have one, and he ran out into the hallway, and he had all those posters with the eagles and things, and then they write it's not a good. It's a kind of a sarcastic quote on all those. What are they called?
It's like all these pithy quotes, and there's always a picture of like an eagle grabbing a fish.
Yeah. Anyway,
those were all the rage for a while.
They were, yeah. They're very funny. I love when you see them in an office. It's kind of funny when you walk by and you see those. His was like an iceberg, and I just talked to him. Iceberg, a ship hitting an iceberg or something. And it was
don't let your life be an example to others.
Yeah.
That's one of the great ones.
Anyway, all right. So, tell me about your path and how you got to where you are and how you got into the industry now. Did you already kind of do that, though? You already kind of talked about it. No, you didn't. So how did you get into this industry?
Oh, so it's funny. I took a crazy path. It's never been clear. It's always been kind of crazy. Right out of college, I worked with a company that was in the insurance industry that did legal services. They would basically, people don't realize, like, all these kind of fender benders that happen all over the world, none of those cases go to court. They all go into this company, and they have their own judges that they just use fellow insurance industry people, and they decide all these cases, and they do over 250,000 of them a year. And so I spent 5 years with those guys right out of college. It was perfect because I got to live in Florida and Seattle and San Francisco and go to Hawaii and Alaska and do all kinds of cool stuff. But this was back in the dark ages when the internet, just kind of appeared. And part of my job, because all this technology finally showed up, was getting people set up with laptops and with networking, wiring up the offices and all this stuff. So after about 5 years of insurance, I was like, man, this tech thing I think has some legs. I'm going to run with this. And so I crossed over to start doing startups. And one of the first companies there, all the way back in 97, was a company called DCI, and they were the leader in tech events back in that day. Before Dreamforce, there was a show called the CRM Expo, which was the biggest CRM show, and they did Data Warehouse World. They did the shows for Microsoft and for Oracle. So I got a chance to kind of, when email and SEO came of age, I was working on all these tech events. And it's kind of crazy. I actually have an interview that's going to drop in the next couple weeks on Marketing Over Coffee from a coworker of mine from DCI. And it's just this ridiculous, amazing story about how after I left in 2000, they found out that the company had been funneling money down to Bermuda, and a bunch of people got arrested, and some of them had to do prison time. Yeah, it's just like this totally nuts story about people going to they were funneling the money to Bermuda, and then a couple years later, the founder wanted to sell, and so he had this problem of like, wait a minute, I've shown the income. I've understated the income because I've funneled this money down to Bermuda. And so then when they went back on board with the I guess at that point it kicked off an audit or something, and it just completely, it's just an insane story. Everything about that place was kind of nuts. So, and then from there, I got kind of plugged into a network. So it was like the CTO of that company jumped to another startup, and I have just kind of laddered from startup to startup at that point. But all the way back in 97 was my first kind of shot at tech. And then all those startups after that, every one of them I've been doing, trade shows and events have been part of the marketing mix. So that's how I've kind of done the road miles and gotten to play with the tech and get it finally to ultimately to Event Hero.
And how did you get into Event Heroes? Who did you meet? Was that?
That was John Federico. I know I don't know where we'll drop in the scheme, but folks can hear John's story too, and he can obviously give more detail to that. But I met him when he was at Audible. He was the company that was doing Audible books, and they got picked up and acquired by Amazon. And it was funny. I just remember this was like 2005, 2006, the birth of podcasting. And I was actually over at Marketing Sherpa at that time too. I did a stint over there where that was kind of like before Marketing Profs. Marketing Sherpa was the big online service. And I remember seeing John Federico from Audible, his name coming through, and I was like, I got to meet that guy. And sure enough, I had met him, and then I almost started working with him maybe around 2010 somewhere. But I was busy with another startup, and then he actually moved on from that. And so around 2012 or somewhere, I had finished up with the last gig I was at, and I was like, man, I want to go work with John because he's just, he's got a great grip on tech. He's got great experience. He understands media, and in fact, that's kind of a crazy story. Like working with John, there's been two big things that I don't know. As you get older, you start to think more about how pieces get lined up and how coincidence draws us together. And I was down in New York City thinking about, do I want to try this? Do I want to go off on this? And my parents for many years had gone to New York City, and they stayed at this place called the Leo House, which this is a whole nother crazy thing. It's this, it's run by the church. So you can actually stay. If you're a member of the church, you can get a room in New York City for like $80. And if you don't know, like rooms are like $400 in New York City down in Manhattan. And as I was driving down there, just randomly in the cab going to meet with John, I looked over and I saw the Leo House. Like I didn't even know it was there. And I was like, wow, that's a weird sign. I think I'm going to have to give this some more thought. And and it's been startup life here. It's been crazy, but I've never felt more that I belong with this bunch of guys. We have a great time working together and we're doing some cool stuff. So hopefully the gods of finance will shine upon us.
So what's the biggest challenge you've kind of encountered with Event Hero?
It's evangelical sale, which is always the thing with a startup. You've got some cool toys or tools, that can really help out, but people just don't even know they exist. Like people don't search for these things. They're kind of happy with the badge scanner that they've got where they have to wear this thing around their neck or they have to go get some kind of weird device. And they don't think like, I could just download an app to my phone and kind of cut everything out of the loop. All the expense vanishes suddenly and it becomes really cheap to do. So that's always a challenge, the evangelical sale, which is just as challenging as saying it. And the other half is fighting the existing system. You see this more and more as your eyes get opened up. It's kind of like there are events where they've been using these crappy badge scanners, and the people who are peddling the scanners are making a ton of money, and the people who are running the show are making money off of it. So there's really nobody looking out for the interest of the exhibitor. I mean, it could be cheaper, easier, and faster for them, but nobody really cares that much, except for the shows that are smart enough to realize that the happier and more effective the exhibitors are, the better the show's going to be in the long run. So it's finding people that can look past the cash, and if they manage it the right way, they can make even more money because it's easier and faster and cheaper. But a lot of people get caught in the momentum, and they're not really looking at ways to improve. They're just looking at ways to milk what they've already got.
That's interesting, and we're having the same kind of issues with AV for Planners because vetting the audiovisual is like people just don't do it. They just kind of trust what they're getting, and this must be the right stuff. It's very interesting. And I had kind of underestimated the pain. I mean, I used to complain about, I was at a company called AccuRev where we made software development tools, and we did some research and we were like, oh my God, the average company does this once every 7 years. So it's like if you miss the shot this year, you're coming back 7 years later. And that's it was just ridiculously painful, but we had a high enough win ratio that it was okay. But it's the same thing with shows. It's kind of like if somebody's going to try some untested tool and they're going to have a crappy experience, well, you got 12 months now to wait until the show comes back and they're in the planning cycle again. And then even some of these huge shows, they're planning 2 or 3 years in advance. So the short version is, I wish for a shorter buying cycle. That would make my life easier. But it's not all about me, unfortunately. So you kind of already said, but when did you know you made the right decision to go with Event Hero, or is that still to come?
It's I know that this is where I should be spending my days, and we're working on good things, and we're closing some deals, and so things are good. So I guess in some ways I say it's already a complete success. So that's really it. Because really, whether or not you're finally you manage to make tons of money and have a stable job, I mean, that's just kind of the way the cards fall, and you don't have as much control over that as people would hope or wish. But another crazy random one, this is totally another bizarre Event Hero related story, is that I actually used to talk to the Ultimate Warrior. Do you remember that guy from wrestling? I know, it's totally absurd. One day he had this blog. It was fantastic. It was just like these crazy rantings. And one day he was like, hey, if you want to talk to me, I'll be your coach for $100. And I was like, well, hell, even just to get an email from the Ultimate Warrior personally for $100, I'll do that. Let me do that. It's totally nuts. So I sent him this email. I was like, hey, here I am. I just PayPal'd you my $100. And he totally went off. He spent 2 days researching everything about me and wrote back this 5-page thing of here's what you're working on. Here's what you got to do. And I was just like, this is fantastic. And about 3 or 4 months after I was in at Event Hero, I had some other folks I had worked with. This is the way it always works. The developers from the first place go to the next place, and then they call you up 3 months later, okay, we've settled in. Come on, we can use you here. And so I went and interviewed with these guys, and I just had this feeling. I was like, this is just it's just the corporate job. I'm going to go in here, and the product is not that exciting, but I could just grind it out and sell a piece of my soul, and life could go good. And literally, the day I was thinking about it was the day the Ultimate Warrior died. And I was like, oh my God, this is a sign. Like, if I can't let the Ultimate Warrior die again. I'm going to follow my dream. And like every deal, 2 years down the line now too, I could totally be like, damn you, Ultimate Warrior, you sent me the wrong direction. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, all that to say that things are good today, at least. That's all I can say.
All right, so take us through kind of what you're currently what you do for Event Hero, and you can kind of tell us a little bit about how it works. If someone wanted to work with Event Hero, let's kind of take it two ways. Like, what's it like for you, your typical day there, and then what's the sales process basically for someone?
Yeah, so John Federico has been running hard and doing a lot of the integration end of the business. So we'll have large companies that are like, okay, we have these 5 event systems, and we can't get the data from the registration system to our marketing automation system, and we need to get it over into the back end to our own, accounting and e-commerce. So that's the kind of top end of the business. And then where we had started out is kind of, I've been running a big chunk of that, where it's people that just need badging. They need the ability to scan badges so that they can track, either do lead retrieval, so that their exhibitors can follow up with the people who visited the booth, or they can track session information, like how many people were in the keynote and how many arrived late, and all kinds of questions and answers they may have about the way sessions work. And so, my days are pretty much, it's we do the Event Tech Digest, so I put out a newsletter every week that talks about event tech stuff. And then from there on, it's kind of classic marketing and sales. I usually try to have a campaign or two running at all times where I'm creating some content and pushing it out there. Oh, yeah, in fact, that was for your readers. We have a whole book out about how to use Eventbrite as your kind of core conference and expo system. People don't realize that you can manage the expo floor, and you can use Eventbrite to feed your lead retrieval system. And so over at eventhero.io, we've got a white paper, and I'll send you a link that they can get to that direct. We have no hassle download, and you can check that out. But so, yeah, it's pretty much, the folks that run a show want to offer lead retrieval or track sessions, and so those are the inbound leads for us. And then it's just a matter of demoing the product, explaining how it works, and seeing if it fits within their workflow, and if they, if it's going to make their life easier. And the majority of times it does. We have problems with folks that already have some existing systems. Like if you've already dropped $50,000 into badge printers and it's not one of the ones we support, then it may not be a fit. But then there's this whole other level of folks who never had $5,000 or $10,000 for a badging and tracking system, and now they can get in the door at less than $2,000 with a full-on, lead retrieval, QR encoded badges, all this stuff. So there's this whole other section of people that could never afford this, and now they can. So that's kind of the most exciting part of the business.
Is there something happening in the future with Event Hero? Do you guys have something that you can see in the future?
We continue to build out the core product, and I think one thing that we're kicking around that's on the product roadmap, which we're trying to see if it's the way to go, but is completely on-demand badge printing. And we've seen this over in the UK, where somebody gets an email with a PDF and they print their own badge at home, mm-hmm. and it just saves on a ton of paper. It's all on demand. It doesn't require any printing on site, and it makes a whole lot of headaches go away and makes things even cheaper yet. So that's big. For Event Hero, I have to pause for a second and just remember how much I'm able to talk about on the air, what I can and can't talk about. But the biggest point is that there's all this event tech, and there needs to be a central point where it can funnel through. We've integrated with over a dozen registration systems, so we're already in a position where we understand how these integrations work. And the future for us is doing more and more of that, of going into these really difficult, thorny IT situations where there's just data all over the place that people can't do anything with or God forbid, they're just having to do all kinds of uploads and downloads to keep things in sync, and making all that pain go away so that they can actually use the data to take advantage of it. And it sounds so abstract, but to give you a really great example is the ability for your sales guy to go into Salesforce and see a campaign of all the people that visited your booth and visited 4 specific sessions. So if the folks that on the floor, they all went to the database information sessions that, would only attract these kinds of people. And they're the people that went to your booth. Now suddenly, instead of having to call all 700 people that came by your booth, you've got the 10 that you could literally send some Bose headphones or something because you want to get their attention and you know that they're right on the mark.
Wow. That's really powerful.
Yeah, it's fun. That's where the cool stuff happens. And again, if you can make it so that suddenly you're closing deals, it just makes the shows look more effective and kind of everybody wins.
Right. All right, so let's ask some questions to learn more about John. Take us through a typical day. Do you have like any morning rituals? You have kids, don't you?
I have. I was just somebody sent me this great article from The Economist talking about the U-bend of life, and that basically, like when you hit the global average is 46 years old, like you're at the most depressed you're ever going to be, and I fully appreciate that where I'm at right now, because you're just like at this hellacious position of I've got young kids and I've got seniors that like need some extra help, and and of course let me throw a startup on top of that just to make things interesting. So yeah, my life is it's so funny. Like I'm blessed, and I look back and I'm like, hey, there are people 200 years ago that my life seems better than a king, but nonetheless, it's basically like the screaming starts in the morning when the kids get up. And it's, the same batch of fights that you have every single day about getting them to school and getting them out there. If I'm lucky, I'll be up an hour before everybody else and get a chance to kind of get some reading and writing done, and then get everybody out the door. And then it's, pretty much back to work, creating content for most of the day. But I have a home-based office, so that's fantastic. I can go take a walk at lunch and walk into town and get something to eat and actually get some exercise, which things are improving on that front. And then, around 4:30 or so, the screaming and, yelling begins again. And get everybody fed, actually have some fun with the kids. And and hopefully on a good day, everybody's out cold in bed by 9 o'clock, and then actually get an hour or two of, usually nowadays it's just more work. There used to be a time when I would like read a book or listen to music or play computer game or, do something cool. But now it's, again, just more damage control, cleaning up what's happened to the house. And this rinse and repeat daily. This is my lot right now.
So you wrote a book in this time, though, too, didn't you? That's pretty heady, too.
So the backbreaker with that was the second baby. I actually had the book written before the second one was born, and having the second kid, it's funny. You hear people say, especially men say, 2 kids is more than twice the work. And really what it is that like after 2 years of the first kid, usually the mom is now shouldering most of the workload. And so the dad's like, hey, this is easy. Well, when the second kid comes, now it's total pandemonium and the dad gets fully engaged again. So it's really an infinitely more amount of work for the second kid for the dad, because the dad now has to stay engaged and has to, help out with everything. I got B2B Marketing Confessions that came out in 2013, I think. It's been so long now. I have to go back and look. But yeah, that was, I wanted to get down on paper everything that I had picked up over the past, 15 years up until that point of writing in tech. And it was a good project. Unfortunately, J.K. Rowling has nothing to worry about. I haven't cut into her book sales at all with it. But it was great to do. And just a ton of work. And so I have another book that's I'm about 100 pages in, but I really haven't done much of anything with it in almost a year, as I said, because the second kid has kind of killed that. So, God willing, one day I will get back to writing, being more productive. Oh, yeah. Or another one. I actually spent a whole year on a book about business and comedy. I thought that was going to be like the next huge thing. And I can send you a link. I have a blog post about that. I did a year of research, and the end of that year of work was there's not enough there for a book. So I have like this blog post of the top 10 things I learned about business and comedy.
How's that blog post doing?
It does well. Yeah, it does well because it's literally, it is still a year's worth of work boiled down into one blog post.
Wow.
So if, and for anybody that is considering writing a book about business and comedy, you owe me a year of your life because, it's just so tough.
And so do you have, their daily web stuff that you look at, or some websites that you like to look at?
It's so funny. We've kind of left that golden age. I still use Feedly to track a lot of blogs. Everybody, like feed readers was all the thing in Google Reader, and I think anybody productive still uses something along those lines. So that's right at the top of the list of like keeping up with the rest of the world. And I think it's pretty much the same as everybody else. It's like the Gmail, Facebook, LinkedIn, Hootsuite cycle is kind of the morning time wasting routine, and I try to limit that cycle to like 5 times a day because it's just a time suck, even though it's fun and it's the shiny object. But that's my tool stack.
And speaking of books, what book do you gift to others?
Oh, one of my favorite books, Simon Sinek, both Start With Why, is just a fantastic book for anybody in business or marketing. And then he has Leaders Eat Last too. His book about leadership is, I feel, really transformational. He's just really, his writing has spoken to me. And so that's a great book. For anybody that's into running or walking, Danny, what's Danny's last name? Oh, this is killing me. The Tao of Running is a fantastic book. And then, oh God, yeah, the other guy too that did the book about Born to Run is a fantastic book. It's totally like, how people talk about the Atkins diet, 5 years ago, and like you'd run into these people at parties and you'd be like, oh my God, get the hell away from me. They're totally wild-eyed maniacs preaching. I've totally become that way with forefoot running. Basically the entire running shoe industry, as far as I'm concerned, is promoting injury. And so if you run or walk, you need to check out those books because I had given up on running. I couldn't run anymore. And then once I learned about this different way to run and technique, I can run every day now if I want to. But of course now I don't have time to, I'm psyched to have 20 minutes to chase my kids. But it's just amazing as far as fitness on that front. So yeah, those are the three, and of course it shows the stage in my life too. Like I probably couldn't even name a fiction book from like the past 5 years. I'm totally reading for fun as a foreign concept, unfortunately.
Yeah, I do a little bit of reading in the evening, but I seem to fall asleep immediately. But I use the Audible. I do listen to a lot of books. That's my thing.
Great way to get time back. And isn't it funny too? There's some, in fact, this is so funny. The Marketing Confessions, my book, I did an audiobook because I was like, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to sell it to the podcast listeners. And it did. The podcast listeners have loved it and they've all chewed it up. But one day I went over and looked at the Audible reviews and everybody is like 1 star. They're like, this guy talks too fast. He sucks. Oh, no. Yeah. Like the Audible. In fact, I don't even look because I don't even care. Those aren't my customers. And, this is not a storybook. I'm not competing with Stephen King. But yeah, it's just hilarious to see like all these. You wonder who writes these books or audiobooks that get panned, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I know that's where that happens. Oh God, the other. Yeah, I did listen to Stephen King's Dark Tower unabridged as an audiobook, which was like, 150 CDs or some insane thing. It took me like 3 years. So that was my last run in fiction on the audio front.
How funny. So how about podcasts? What are your favorite podcasts you listen to?
I cherry pick Mark Maron. He has good stuff. Everyone, sometimes he has guests I don't care about, but like he had a great interview with James Taylor recently, who's kind of like in Western Massachusetts, he's kind of like our patron saint. He's revered here. Kevin Smith, Fat Man on Batman. I've actually have read Batman, most of my life, and that is just a fantastic and funny cast. Startup, the Gimlet Media guys, that of course has kind of kicked off another wave of listeners for us, and that's been huge, and I love what they do. And then, I lament every day Tom Webster's Friday 5, which was a great cast that he did, but he has not put any episodes out recently for that. But if you love music, because I'm a huge music fan, I'm a music junkie, and that was a great front. But I guess that's the short list of the casts.
I did like that. I was listening to that also.
Isn't it? There's just such a link between for fans of music. So you have certain songs that attach to certain points in your life, and having somebody throw out like their 5 biggest songs, it gives you a real interesting look into who they are and kind of what they love in music. And I'm a huge music junkie. I have I always have to buy the biggest iPhone because I always want to have my whole music collection with me wherever I go, and just a huge fan.
Yeah, I sat down and after listening to it, of course, you think of it for yourself. So I have my 5 that I had, hoping to get on the show someday. But but it was like, I can't really say some of the stories, but. You're coming up with them like, oh yeah, but then I don't want anybody in the world to know that.
Right. No one wants to know what was happening.
Or no one wants to know is the other part. Yeah.
Too raw, too dangerous, incriminating. Yeah. That's like that. I'm so glad that we had no social media when I was in college.
Right.
I don't want any of that to be on the record.
Right, and that's interesting too. Earlier you're talking about like the podcast. The M show that people would come and know you. Nowadays too, with Facebook is so prevalent that you kind of know what everybody's doing that now that way also.
It is, and that is really the most underrated thing of all this too. You see articles about like, oh, Facebook is bad for you and people are addicted to Facebook. And it's like, well, I used to have to read crummy newspaper articles about countries that I'm never going to go to. It was like my joke was always strife and strifistan. That was always the headline. And now when I check out my media in the morning, I'm like, my friends in California and all over the world, I can see what they're up to and maybe see some pictures of their kids and how they're doing. And that's a much more positive experience. So, yeah, it is amazing how we're just, of course, but then there's oversharing too. Of course, we don't see too much of that, but I think the benefits outweigh the costs.
I do too. It's interesting too. I've always had the problem with that with Facebook for work stuff, like putting work stuff on there because it is mostly just all my friends. And when it first started, I had 2 separate accounts. I had Michael McCallan, which was all business stuff, and then I had tried to put all business people on that one, and then I had Mike McCallan, which I still use all the time. That's all my friends and family and people.
Right. For that. No. I've been at more than one workplace where it was like you had that senior boss who would like friend everybody, and everybody's just like, oh, and they would most people would end up blocking him, and so then it ended up becoming a bizarre situation.
It crashed and burned for me. I was just like, I couldn't, that was when at first people started using it, one of the the business one. I still, now my badge in there, my picture in Michael McCallan says, go to Mike McCallan. I don't use this, I don't use this anymore, but
go to the other one. Yeah. That's every network goes through that, where it's like the first 6 months, it's all your cool friends and you can say all kinds of ridiculous stuff. And then suddenly about 2 years later, now everybody and their uncle's in on it and you have to start censoring yourself.
I have like my mom's friends, or like my mom, like, oh, my mom's friends are all, oh, your son is so funny, and I'm like, he's set up this thing, and like, it's weird, just all very strange.
Oh yeah, well, and at the other end too. So I have young nieces and nephews, and like when they post something a little bit inappropriate, I'll like it just to like send them the message like, hey, this is just your creepy uncle. There's a lot of people much creepier than me out there who can see this, so maybe you ought to think twice about this.
That's great.
Yeah. It's always fun.
So have you ever had a nickname?
No, not really. I was trying to think of it. In college, and even it's so funny. In college, people would call me J-Wall, just J-Wall short. And then there was that whole period, like when email first came on the scene, where everybody's email address was their first initial last name. So J-Wall stuck again to another group of people. But no exciting name like Stinky or anything that is really exciting or of note.
I have a good friend named Stinky, actually.
Do you have a Stinky?
I do.
Dude, the other classic, I went to UMass Amherst, and so had tons of friends from Boston. So it's like the joke, there's Mick, Red, Sully. There's the whole Sully crew. That's the most popular nickname in the bag.
How funny, yeah. I shared an office with him, actually, and when I worked before I started my company. And I kind of gave him the nickname because he would come into work. He was like partying all night long, and he'd come in and he'd take off his shirt and he would give himself a shower and he'd say, "Oh, I got to take a shower in a bottle." He'd spray himself down and like, I go, "Dude, you stink." You're
totally bringing the bar with you. Yeah, that's
It was horrible. Really great guy, clever. Great. And actually, people who are listening to this know him, so probably.
Again, the self-censoring just coming into it.
Yeah,
I think he's the greatest. He's a hell of a guy.
He is, though. But and actually now he's grown up, so that was a long time ago. Anyway, but the industry-wide, he's known as Stinky.
That's right. The long tail of those nicknames can come back and bite you. That's the problem.
Yeah. But it's also good marketing for him because he's a graphics guy, and you don't forget the guy named Stinky, who does a good job.
Right.
You could be
as long as you can Google Stinky. If he comes up when you Google him, that's the important part. You can't lose the link.
I don't think he does, but if you're a John or a Mike and you're good, there's
yeah.
1,000 of us out there. But
Oh, this is like classic small town. There's a lady here who makes wedding cakes. Literally, the townies here, they call her the Asian lady. It's like if you need a cake, you go to the Asian lady. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, where the hell am I? Is this 1950? What? But
that's terrible.
Yeah, it's
That's
unbelievable.
terrible.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
Yeah. All right. So, what's the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice that this was funny. I had to, well, of course, yeah, the easy one. So this was my way to loop back in my pessimistic quote, which is Hanlon's razor, which is never attribute anything to malice if it can be adequately explained by stupidity. And that is like the most fantastic advice like you'll ever get. And I find myself giving it to my dad. Like he's always getting angry, like at the insurance company, because he just feels like they're doing something to get. I'm like, Dad, nobody cares at the insurance company. That's the problem, is that nobody gives a dime. And it's the same thing too. You see things like you get crummy reviews on something or whatever, and you think people are out to get you. And it's just like, no, people just don't care. They're stupid. Like that's the best advice you could get.
Right.
So yeah, that was the leader. The other one I had to think I have a mentor, Don Booth, a Texas attorney. And this is kind of funny because the place I worked in was so corrupt that I was getting moral advice from the attorney, which just kind of goes to show what kind of den of snakes that is. But he just always would have fantastic advice. The best one, though, we were talking about some political situation or war, and he just said, Jay, some folks just need killing.
Jeez.
I was like, well, yeah, I guess that is, you do reach a point where that's the way that goes. So yeah, those are the gems.
That's very good. Very good. So tell me something that's working for you right now, like a new app, a vitamin, an exercise program, something like that. What's working for you, like a hack or a time saver? You have anything that's really working for you?
Apple Pay, I'm in love with now. I'm like the guy that's always, every cashier is, they're excited to see somebody try it because nobody's tried it yet. So and it's funny because I got on the coin bandwagon. Did you follow the whole coin thing?
I watched a little of that. Yes, I didn't. I wasn't part of it, but I saw it.
You didn't get stuck. Well, it's insane. So there's been all these crowdfunding things, and kind of the rage now is like people talking about these crowdfunding things that go awry and go wrong. Like people are astounded. They just assumed it was like Amazon, that you would pay and the thing would show up. And all over the website, it's like, look, this is experimental and it may not be done on time and it may not work. And, but everybody still gets angry when it doesn't happen. And Coin was one of these things behind it. I think I saw my receipt was in 2013 or 2014, put down $50 for this thing. And the idea is it's shaped just like a credit card, but it had Bluetooth connectivity in it and a little LCD screen. And the idea is that you could load up 5 or 6 of your credit cards, and you just push the button for the card you want, swipe it, and it would be on there. And it had this cool thing where, like, if it got too far away from your phone, it would lock itself so nobody could steal it, and all this cool stuff. Well, it came out like 2 years late, and then even I finally got it, and of course it didn't work. After like 2 weeks, I'm like, this sucks, I'm not using it. And I even got an email forwarded to me from a friend who they're like, there's this other competitor now, and they're like, hey, send us your order form and we'll let you use that money towards ours, which is going to be better. And I'm looking, and the new one's like $100 more, and they're like, oh, and it'll be out in April 2016. I'm like, I fell prey to that once before. I'm not jumping on that bandwagon. And then finally the light went on when I started using the iPhone to pay for stuff that, like, dude, the card's going away entirely. Like, this is the way to do it. You wave your phone, you pay, boom, you're gone. And I guess I don't have an Apple Watch, but I guess it's even better with that. Like, you literally just wave the watch and it pays. You don't have to do anything. And so, yeah, that's the only time saver in my life right now. Again, it's everything is a productivity battle, but Quick Pay at the cashier and having a record that automatically goes into Quicken is trying to do the family finances is great.
That's awesome. So do you have a favorite? Now, I ask industry event just because we are in the meetings and events industry, but you could tell me your favorite event in general if you wanted. Do you go to a lot of industry events?
A fair amount, yeah. I pretty much, for Marketing Over Coffee, I have to hit kind of the big ones, at least as many of those as I can take within a year. So those are all good. Dreamforce is kind of a favorite because that's a great chance to, I can kind of, I can go to San Francisco, which I love. You can catch up with everybody, pretty much the whole world, anybody is there, and it's the best networking event. So that would probably be the biggest. After that, I'm trying to think, the other big event is Tanglewood out here. And I'd mentioned James Taylor is always here. And for the summer, that's kind of the music escape. You can kind of catch a lot of great acts. And so that would be my second after God, I have to put the music first. Actually, the industry events I have to do, and they're great.
Yeah.
I would choose the time with family and friends listening to music, of course, over anything else.
What's the coolest new thing you've seen? I know you kind of talked about the Apple Pay, but what's the coolest new trend you've seen or are excited about?
Let's see, other stuff that I'm totally excited about. I've been doing a lot of stuff with audio gear. I think there's, in fact, I didn't talk about that at all. The whole Johnny Headphones project that I've been working on. I've been messing around with a bunch of different sets of headphones and modding them to add different cables and try different things that work. And so I've kind of settled on a headphone configuration that I really like, using the Sony 7506 and then adding a boom microphone to it. In fact, that's why it's amazing. I used to have $120 microphone that I would podcast with. And I've been able to put together this rig with this boom microphone that I'm using here, and it literally sounds better. And the mic itself is like a $35 microphone. And it just, I love the way this thing sounds. And
it sounds great.
Yeah, it's just nuts. The big change for me too is that it's a boom microphone, so it's attached to the headphones. So I'm one of these people that can't sit still. I'll be spinning in my chair and stuff as I'm talking. And with a regular microphone, you go off axis, it sounds terrible. Whereas with this thing, the boom, I can dance around all I want, and the mic stays right in front of my face and sounds good. So
that's great. I have the same thing. I have all this gear downstairs that in a box, like the Audio Technica thing that I spent $300 and whatever for, and I'm sitting here on a Logitech headset.
Right.
It's like what that's trying to, and I like it. The look of it, it looks cool because it's studio. But literally, I've been recently podcasting from the car because loud kids around and stuff, and sitting in the back seat of my wife's car, and because it's a perfect place to do a podcast, really.
Yeah, no, that is an old voiceover trick I know, is to lock yourself in the car, because in that car you've got too. I understand that's like safe from chemical attack. You've got totally airtight action.
Well, and it's very comfortable. It's probably the most comfortable place that anywhere.
Is it most comfortable seat in the house too?
I sit in the back seat, put the front seat up, and I sit back there and have a cup of coffee, and I fire up the thing, and it's been really great. And actually today is the first day in a while I haven't been able. My wife's been off work. And so she took off with the car this morning. I'm all like, where am I going to podcast?
Where am I going to find the quiet?
It's like the most expensive audio studio there is.
Well, I don't know about that, but it is definitely.
Well, it is one of them. I mean, like a mobile one. How about that?
Mobile phone. Definitely. That's.
All right. So last question. If you could talk to the high school senior you, what would you tell yourself?
Oh, yeah. Doing this, I'm like, sell Apple at 500, right? That would be the message. If I could only send one message back to the past.
You have the best answer so far of any of the people that would say, listen, I never thought about that. Yeah.
That would be
all stocks.
Right. And, so obviously I've spent way too much time thinking about this kind of ridiculousness, being able to talk to my past self. The big... and it's all folly, like, because you just make the best decision you can with the data you have in front of you at the time, and the rest of it is just like, oh, what if I knew these secret tricks? And so the big thing for me, if I had to look at like a single point, there was a time in '97 when I was in the Bay Area and I was living out there, and I came back to Boston, and so from a career point of view, I should have stayed there. I should have stayed in the Bay Area. Coming back to Boston was not the best career path because there was stuff to do. But obviously, if I had just jump pure tech at that point then in '97, who knows where the heck I'd be today. But and that's the flip side of those too, right? Many a sci-fi movie is, I think that's the right thing. And then who knows, I could be like a homeless alcoholic, on Mission Street if I had done that or something. Who knows?
It's really true. It's happened to a lot of people.
I don't know about tech execs, but there are definitely.
Well, you never know. You never know. Yeah.
Right. So you never know. So yeah, I guess that would be aside from stocks, it would be stick with San Francisco. But yeah, as much as I complain about my life being at the magic 46, coming to the 46 of depression, I wouldn't mess with anything. Things are going pretty well. It's challenging, but I wouldn't screw with anything.
Very cool. And where were you out here? Were you in San Francisco or?
When I was living up in Walnut Creek.
Oh, nice. That's I worked out there for years. Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a nice deal, and you can take the BART right into town. I had friends that lived right down in San Francisco, and actually, so there's another message to send back. I'd say like to make more of the cities where you're in. I was working jobs where I would travel a lot, so it was kind of like on the weekend I was just happy to like clean the apartment and run all my errands, but like I probably should have been, spending more time in the theater in San Francisco, and I never got to Alcatraz. You kind of like when you're living somewhere, you miss out on some of the things that the cities have to offer. Because same with Seattle, I actually got to know Seattle a little better. I did a better job over there, but yeah, kind of seize the day, because as you get older, it doesn't get any easier.
Yeah, the less time. It's funny that too. Like I never walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, nor went to Alcatraz, and I grew up in San Francisco until I think I was 30-something when some people came into town and wanted to go sightseeing. I'm all like, yeah, that sounds like fun. I've never been there. And they're like, what? I've driven across the Golden Gate Bridge, 8 billion times, but
right, never walked
either of them. And Alcatraz is fantastic fun.
That is the secret hack, is to always invite your friends. Invite from people from out of town, because then that gives you the excuse to. Oh God, there's this British comedian. It was hilarious. She was talking about, life now with kids. When you're younger, you're like, oh, look at the new restaurant. We got to try that. Yeah, we could go any night. And now it's like, yeah, new restaurant. We will never go there. We're never going to go there.
That's great. All right. So, John, how do people get a hold of you?
Marketing Over Coffee is the easiest way, or my blog is jw5150.com, jw5150.com, and those are the two easiest ways to get in touch with me. I'm pretty much social media. I don't want to say. Trying to find the word I'm looking for. I'm not indiscriminate is not the word. I'm at a loss here. But I'm all over social media like a social disease. Let's just say that. So I'm
Nicely
put. I'm easy to find. So I would love to hear from anybody doing marketing, tech, interesting stuff, and check out the podcast. That would be great.
Yeah, and then of course Event Hero.
And Event Hero, definitely eventhero.io. If you need badges, lead retrieval, scanning, or just integration knowledge, we can help you out there.
Yeah, it's interesting after talking to you and the other John Frederico. It sounds fantastic. So I encourage people to go over there, and I don't have anything for it right now, but you never know. When it comes down the pike, there's all sorts of stuff going on with us.
Yeah, no, that would be great. We were always interested. Yeah, it's just you kind of, until you have it in your hand and like you scan 20 badges, in less than a minute, because these, people don't realize like those old scanners were crappy. The phones and cameras are so good and so powerful now that it's just a complete game changer.
It really is. All right, John, thank you so much. Really enjoy everything you do. So keep it up.
Oh, thanks, Mike. It was great to be on. I appreciate it.
All right. And I hope our paths cross one of these days.
I know we had one of these. In fact, I'm looking at March in the Bay Area. I got to get out there. So, and next time I get out there, we will definitely hold a meetup, and we'll have to get some people together. But we got to get
fun.
FaceTime.
Yeah, that would be fun. All right. Thank you so much. Okay, podcast listeners, thank you so much for listening to the interview with John. It was quite fun. It was kind of a treat for me since, as you know, I listened to their show for so long. I felt like I knew him already. It's great to connect with him. I wanted to thank 99 Designs for their sponsorship. You can just head over there if you want to get a little deal on. They have a little special deal for Meetings podcast listeners. You go to tinyurl.com/meetings99. That helps support the show. And I would like to also thank IMX America for all their great work at Frankfurt and in Las Vegas. Check out that show if you have a chance. And if you have any questions or comments, please email me at meetingspodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at MMCALLEN. That's McAllen, but M McAllen, 2 M's, CALLEN. You could tweet me there. And if you have any time right now, if you're running or something or working in the garden, don't bother doing this right now. But if you think of it, go on over to iTunes and leave a review. It'd be really great for the Meetings podcast. It really helps us. So thank you very much. I appreciate you. I appreciate you listening to the show. It's a lot of fun. I love talking with these people. And please email me. Let's talk. And thank you. And I'll see you next time.
We appreciate and thank you for listening to the Meetings podcast. Please email with any questions or comments to meetingspodcast@gmail.com. The Meetings podcast is sponsored by IMEX America, America's worldwide exhibition for incentive travel, meetings, and events. The Meetings Podcast theme music is brought to you by the Delgado Brothers, which can be found at delgadobrothers.com.